Kingston's landscape is dotted with historic landmarks and picturesque scenes. Today's guest, Pine DuBois, has made it her mission to preserve many of those historic landmarks as well as Kingston's coastal country landscape. As Executive Director of the Jones River Watershed Association, President and Executive Director of the Jones River Landing, and a lifelong environmental advocate, you'd be hard-pressed to find an inch of shoreline, a stretch of river, a species of marine life, or a part of Kingston's history that Pine hasn't fought to protect. So I hope that you'll sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode of Good Day Kingston. Pine, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me, Josh. It's a pleasure to be here.
This is exciting. I know how busy you are in the town with the various projects and organizations that you work with and serve on the boards of, so it's really a pleasure to have you in. And
it's fun to be here
with us. But I've seen everything that you've been up to in Kingston, but I'm wondering, what brought you to Kingston?
Actually, an ad in the Globe. I was looking for a way to get out of Charlestown, to tell you the truth, and a 100-acre cranberry bog was advertised, and I got down here and fell instantly in love with Silver Lake, and now it's Silver Lake Sanctuary. So it's been a long ride, but it's been great.
And how many years ago was that?
1975. I don't know how many years ago. I lost count somewhere along the way.
Well, now you find yourself spending a lot of your time at the Jones River Landing Environmental Heritage Center, where you're charged with a number of cultural, ecological, historical programs. And the way that I look at it is you're working really hard today to preserve the history, but you're also working really hard today to ensure Kingston's future, our future. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do there?
So the Jones River Landing Environmental Heritage Center is on the site of the oldest continuously operated boatyard in the nation. And I didn't know that when we bought it in 2003. So I assume there's a lot of people in Kingston that don't know that as well. But it's a rich and treasured history, and it wasn't just little boats. It was the first ship of the Continental Navy. It was 200 or so vessels that sailed the Caribbean and to China and to the Mediterranean and actually launched the trade for the U.S. So there's a lot to learn about that, and that's essentially why the Jones River Watershed Association, which bought the landing, established that new supporting organization, so that we could build boats, so that we could invite people to come down and get in the river and learn, as we have learned all along, that this is an exciting little river. It's all of 7 miles long, but it's the largest river draining to Cape Cod Bay, and it's the river, the Shallop and the Mayflower folks came up naming it for their captain. So, it's where they came to first. Why? Because it's so rich. So we've been kind of on that exploratory journey since starting the Watershed Association in 1985. And again, that was because of Silver Lake. And learning the connection between this great glacial lake that's one of the 12 largest in the Commonwealth, and the Gulf of Maine, which is why everybody from Europe came here, was the fish. It wasn't anything else. It was the fish. And now we're losing the fish, and so we have to work very hard to, make sure that the next generations have that same resource.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you said the next generation had that resource, because I now take my 3-year-old to the landing, and he's checking out the boats that you're building. He's spending time on the river, and it is that next generation now that I'm watching sort of grow up around this, and
that's what we have to worry about. And the more people realize that everything we do today is going to be very impactful on their future, I think the better care we'll take not only of the trash we throw on the road, but how we're restoring the river, taking out the dams, that kind of thing. That is all part of patching back the resource that enabled our society to reach where it is today.
Yeah. And you know, that is no easy task. That's no simple task. You're incredibly busy. Whenever I see you, you're, you know, running from one meeting to the next, and you've usually got a hand tool in one hand. What's on tap for you this year? What are you going to be up to in 2019?
Well, big stuff. As you know, we've been working for several years with the town to raise the funds and to get the permits together and to get the engineering together so that we could remove the Elm Street Dam. For people that don't know, it's 2.5 miles upstream of the bay. It's a head of tide dam. It's a block to many, many fish, to the turtles, to the animals. So we want to remove that dam so that there's more ability for the fish to pass through there and to spawn in their native spawning grounds. So that's one big thing. I think that we hope to start in the summer. The other thing that we're working on is the Drew House. You know, that we bought the property immediately next door to the landing, again, thanks to the town of Kingston. We realized that it's not only the oldest remaining building of the original boatyard, but that it was built by the nephew of the uncles that built the Brig Independence, which is on the town seal. So we're going to be trying to restore that, and we have a great science team that's helping us put together a program to, by next year, we hope, be able to open it up for scholars to study science and help the town learn more of what we need to know. I think people way back then knew a lot more about how to do things than we do. The fact that it's 250 years old or whatever and is in as good condition as it is remarkable.
Yeah. And what's going on with the boat building? Every time I go in there, I check in on the progress of the Kingston lobster boat.
The Kingston lobster boat, actually last night, since about 2005, we've had a group of people that started the Mass Bay Maritime Artisans Association. And they're members of the landing that come, like religion, every Wednesday from 6 to 9. And this project is to recreate the Kingston lobster boat that was designed and built on the river in 1880. And it was it wasn't a motorboat. It was a two-masted sailboat that was a working and racing boat. And in fact, Kingston, Massachusetts, is famous in Holland as a result of the Kingston lobster boat. So people around the world adopted this design and started using it. So they're recreating it. They bought the plans off the Smithsonian Institution, and they slammed on an addition to the keel last night that's pretty remarkable. So that's underway. It'll be a few years, I think.
Yeah. And if someone is watching, if somebody is watching and is interested in, you know, building a boat and learning some of those trades, is this a program that's open to the public?
All people have to do is show up. It's one of those delightful things. You walk in the door at 6 o'clock and introduce yourself and say why you're there, and they'll try and figure out what you know and what you don't know, and use your hands appropriately. So it's really great. Generally speaking, I would say they have, 6 to 15 people there.
That's great. And spring's just around the corner, which means the herring count is also just around the corner. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So the herring count is a project that we started in 2005 when the Division of Marine Fisheries, the State Division of Marine Fisheries, was recruiting organizations like ours to help figure out what the population density of river herring are. So river herring are a sea-run fish that needs to come into their home river every year to spawn, to recreate their next generation, and go back out to sea, usually down the coast, out near North Carolina or Florida or whatever. So every year there's this migration period where fish that were born in the Jones River come back to the Jones River. And they have something in their DNA that either allows them to smell what the water smells like or taste what the water tastes like or whatever it is that brings them home. So Division of Marine Fisheries established a program, taught us how to recruit volunteers like yourself to stand at a counting space. In our situation, we're at the Elm Street Dam fish ladder, and we for 10 minutes in 3-hour segments. So we need 3 volunteers for the 7 to 11 segment, the 11 to 3 segment, and the 3 to 7 segment. We need 3 volunteers each time randomly to show up for 10 minutes and meditate on the water and pray that you see a fish that you can cheer for. So the fish population of river herring are very depleted for a lot of different reasons, mostly because of the dams, the overfishing of like pair trawlers and whatnot. So the Fish Council is trying to mitigate those kinds of impacts out at sea, and we're trying to reestablish the natural spawning habitats. So taking out dams, fixing stream crossings where there are obstacles in the river, getting flow back, which is why we concentrate so much on the city of Brockton and Silver Lake. That's really why the organization started so long ago, was the impact and the damage being done to Silver Lake.
Yeah. Now, are you still recruiting volunteers, or has that started for this year? If anybody's at home and they're itching to meditate on the water, as you put it?
All you got to do is send an email to fish@jonesriver.org or info@jonesriver.org, or give us a call, or sign up our sheet. We'll have a sign-up sheet down at Jones River Landing. If you come down to sign up, I'll give you a tour too. So it's very easy to do. We do it from April 1st to June 1st. So for 2 months, usually if we have 50 volunteers, we're in good shape. Yeah. We don't always get 50, but that means some of us do more than our share counts.
Well, I'll make sure that we get the contact information at the bottom of the screen as well, so if anybody is watching at home. As a volunteer for the last 2 years, I can say that it's a great way to start the day. Lisa, my wife, and I usually show up, and one of us will do our 10-minute counts, and we'll have some coffee and watch the fish, and it's a great way to start the day.
It is really a lot of fun, actually, and when you realize that the reason we were able to raise $1 million and hopefully up to 1.4 million is because of the volunteers. Because if we weren't able to demonstrate that A, we had fish, B, we had enough fish to worry about, and C, that we had a lot of people around that really cared about the fish, then we wouldn't have been so successful. So it's really, kudos to all the volunteers that we were able to do this.
And kudos to you and your team. I mean, when you look at the amount of money that's been raised for the dam removal and how many individual groups have contributed to that, it's really remarkable to see. There's private companies like the Patagonia. There's municipal funds that have come from the town. There's federal dollars. It's really it's nice to see that there's a lot of folks that are as concerned about our waterways as you are and as your volunteers are.
Well, it's a national issue, and it's it's really important to the state of, like I said, the Gulf of Maine. Mm-hmm. So the Gulf of Maine is an enormous fishery, but what do they eat? They eat river herring. Yeah. And so, and Atlantic herring and mackerel and the small fish and all that. So if there's a depletion of those species, then we're losing that richness that actually, supports everything that we like.
So I feel like we've sort of touched on this, but what will the ecological, I guess, what balance will be restored, or what changes will we see once the Elm Street Dam comes down?
The first thing that we'll see is a change in water quality. So part of the problem with dams is that, yes, they're pretty habitats for the swans, but the swans are an invasive species. And the reason the swans are there is because there's a lot of plant growth there. And there's a lot of warm water fish there that are more like pond fish. And so they're cruising around on those. But it's not a natural environment. The other thing is that it warms up the water. So what happens is the sediment that's naturally coming downstream and flushing out into the bay. Okay, everybody, when it rains, what do you see on the roadways? A lot of sand and dirt and stuff. That's going to the river. If there's a dam there, it gets stuck behind the dam. So whatever's in that dirt, all the contamination from the cars and the diesel and the salt and all that sort of stuff, that's in that sediment, that stays there. And when it stays there, especially when it's a lot of phosphorus and a lot of nitrogen from the dogs and the cats and the whatever, all of that material breeds plant life. The plant life sucks all the oxygen out of the water. So in the summertime, the water's hot, there's no oxygen in it, the fish start to die, and you've changed the species complex. So when you take out that dam and the flushing starts, so the sediment is going to move downstream, the water gets cooler, the barriers go away, the turtles don't have to die on the road trying to get from one side to the next. They're staying in the stream. The river herring, the shad, the rainbow smelt, which don't go up fish ladders or anything, the American eels, all of those natural species can move back and forth in the river like they did when the shallop came up the Jones River and went 3 nautical miles, which would have been almost at Wapping Road Dam. So, or the former Wapping Road Dam, because we took that out in 2011. So immediately you'll have a change in the water chemistry, in the water temperature, in what plant growth is there. So instead of having invasive plants, invasive birds, you'll have a more natural complex in the environment. So that's first, but the fish passage is really important. And honestly, I think people are going to love it.
Now, I know last year was the first year in recent memory that fish had made it all the way up to the head wall of the Silver Lake Dam, and is that accurate?
Well, it's the first time we documented,
sorry. And that's very exciting, but then there's new challenges that presents. And can you talk a little bit about those challenges?
So, yes. So there's the biggest problem at Lake Street, which is where Silver Lake High School is. That's Lake Street, and you go a little bit further there, and there's water that goes under the road. That's the Jones River. That's the beginning of the Jones River. Silver Lake is, as I said before, a deep cold water lake. So the deepest part of Silver Lake is 80 feet deep. What other pond in the area can you point to that's 80 feet deep? Right, so that's where the cold water, the cold groundwater is coming in. That feeds the Jones River and it feeds the species. Now there's a fish, we have a shot where you see a white perch down below the dam. Well, there's a ton of white perch in Silver Lake too, but they're landlocked. They can't get out. As a matter of fact, last year when there was some flow, there were dozens of white perch dead trying to get out. So that's a big problem, but it's a political problem because the city of Brockton has been using Silver Lake for their water supply since 1900. Okay, so that's what we're looking at now are some river herring. And these river herring are right at the base of this 4-foot dam. I think there's actually one shot that I provided where the fish is trying to climb up the concrete. Well, but they can't do that. That's not something they're able to do. That's the Elm Street fish ladder. So the fish come up the Elm Street ladder and then they swim another 6 miles up to the base of Silver Lake. And they want to get in because that's their spawning grounds. And for some reason in their DNA, they know that's where they're supposed to be. So our challenge is to get them in there. And the challenge there is the city of Brockton, which in 1904 or 5 built that little dam. And back then they were taking, it took them until the 20s before they were taking 2 million gallons a day. And then incrementally, they start taking more and more and more water. So the laws of the Commonwealth have not been able to keep up. But since they've been going on for so long, everybody goes, oh, they're grandfathered. But they weren't grandfathered for 10 million gallons a day. They were grandfathered for some water for domestic use, not every drop of water in Silver Lake. But that's the way the politicians in Brockton mentally think about it. And so the Central Plymouth County Water District Commission and the advisory board, which are 9 towns now, or 8 towns that are part of this system, are supposed to try to figure out how to better manage that water so that we can have fish and water too.
Yeah.
And that's the goal. We want the city of Brockton to have all the water it needs. We don't want the city of Brockton to waste all the water in Silver Lake and so that all of Jones River and the Gulf of Maine loses its fish resources. And that's what's happening. And that's what's really wrong. So, you know, the Watershed Association started for that reason. We've been doing battle, you know, at the State House and in the courts and in the legislature for a long, long time trying to fix that problem. I think we're really close. And these fish at the base of Forge Pond Dam, as it's called, or the Brockton Dam, they're going to make it happen because the Division of Marine Fisheries has said to us last year, we're going to make Brockton put it. That's the white perch I was talking about.
Oh, and an
and
eel.
The eels, that's
There's
the American eel.
Yeah.
And so the American eels are interesting because the American eels come into the river as babies, little glass eel babies. It's totally illegal for anybody to take them around here, and the environmental police will take your house if they catch you fishing for them, right? But they're trying to get into the lake too because they'll live in the lake for 15 years if they're a male or longer if they're a female and stay there and then go out the river down to the Sargasso Sea, which is somewhere in the Bermuda Triangle, and spawn there. So fisheries are amazing, but the actions that we have are so decisive in terms of whether they're going to live or die. And really, it's about knowing. I mean, when I moved to Silver Lake, I looked at it and I was like, holy mackerel, look at this place. We got to save this place. But I didn't know anything about it. I just knew in my heart and soul that it was really important.
Well, I mean, this is amazing footage, and it's
great, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wonderful to see the different species just in that one shot, and that's a perch.
That's
as well, right?
That's a perch,
Okay.
and that's a pickerel back here.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, for anybody anyone who isn't familiar with the Jones River or Silver Lake, I mean, I can only recommend taking a hike, taking a walk, taking a stop
Fabulous.
at the landing to chat with you. I mean, it's a wonderful resource. And
Well, and you can go to Silver Lake. Silver Lake Sanctuary is a town-owned piece of 100-acre property up there now. So you can go to Silver Lake and walk along the lake shore and be as inspired as I ever was.
And I'm just going to change gears slightly.
Yep,
I know that
sure.
some of the work that you do is also, you know, looking at and studying and preparing for our changing environment.
Yeah.
And you know, I know some of the work that will be going on at the Drew Heritage House. Once that's up and running, we'll address this. But what concerns do you have? I know last year you had 200-year floods, and I think it was a 1 month, a 2 month span. What are your concerns as you know, oceans warm, sea levels rise, and we're all sitting here, you know, living in a coastal community?
Yeah. Well, last year, we had that 100-year storm in January, and we were flooded 5 times in March. Not just one more time, but 5 times. So when the tides and tidal cycles, you know, when it's high tide comes in, if it's a northeast wind, I monitor the NOAA channel and Weather Underground, you know, like I've got nothing else to do sometimes. And when that northeast wind is coming up above 20, 25 miles an hour, and we're in that astronomical new moon or full moon time period, I know we're going to flood. And when we moved there in 2003, it would happen once every 3 or 4 years. Last year, it happened, it was as bad as it was in the blizzard of '78, but it was 5 times. And so, you know, that's a dramatic change. We know that the astronomical high tide has increased since we bought the place by 1.3 inches. We know that. We have the sheets that say that. That's not a sustainable way to be with the river. So we know that we have to adapt our buildings. We know we have to adapt what we're doing. We know we have to be very vigilant when we see it so we don't lose anything, which we generally don't, although the refrigerator did take a dive into the water.
Yep.
If anybody's really interested, we'll go to our website and our Flickr, and you'll see some of that footage from last year. It's important that people stop debating whether it's happening and start jumping on the boat building train, so to speak, and figuring out how are we going to change so that we can move, relocate, or adapt where we are and still be productive, still have our lives intact, still have generations that we have something to offer to.
Well, Pine, I can't thank you enough for coming out and for chatting. I hope that folks at home are as excited as you are about the river, about the species of fish that we have in our own backyard, and about all the work that's going on at the Heritage Center. If anybody is watching and they want more information on becoming a member, becoming a volunteer, learning how to build a boat, can you just tell us the website and any other information that might be helpful?
Easy to go to Jones River, Jones river.org, all one word, and that'll lead you through, I think. We have a home page that has our most recent happenings. You can search, if you want to search for the Drew House, or search for Cape Cod Baywatch, or search for Pilgrim. We've done an awful lot about Pilgrim Station, as you know, and I'm really, really happy it's going to turn off the key this year.
Great. Well, thank you again for coming, and I'll see you on the river.
Excellent. Can't wait.